Hey y'all, how you doing? It's a bit of a surprise. I wasn't supposed to do one today, but I thought it would be. Well, I wish I could tell you that I didn't want to do one today. I didn't. I wanted a day off, but someone forwarded me an article, and I got to tell you, the more I read it, the more irritated I got. This is getting ridiculous. It happens. It happens, guys. Every single time you can think to the history of the league, you have rumors of a dysfunctional locker room. You have rumors of chemistry issues, pecking order, contracts. You boil all of this together, and what do you usually get? You usually get leaks. That's how it happens. You go back in the history of the league. It takes a Herculean effort by the leadership, the front office, the organization in general to keep this stuff in house. I'll tell you right now, Doug Smith certainly didn't get that quote from Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster because he's not plugged in to those guys. So my question is, why is this happening every single week? And what story are you painting? I'm going to tell you this from a perspective as a writer. Now, to those of you who don't know, I have been a sports writer. I'm also a film writer, which means I have both written in fiction. I've dabbled in fiction and nonfiction. Okay. I have spent, I want to say 15 to 16 years now honing my craft as a writer. So when I see the work of a good writer, trust me, it warms my heart. It propels my soul. But when I see the work of Doug Smith, usually it induces vomit. And this is not recent, by the way. I have had an issue with Doug Smith and his reporting and the way that he talks about this sport and this game and how he understands things. And I understand he's a hockey guy, and I understand that a lot of people have told me, you should be thankful for Doug Smith. You should be thankful for this guy. He's covering the Raptors. Sorry, bro. This is not 1995. You need better. Toronto Star, you need someone better. You need someone a lot better. I'm sick of these hockey guys pretending that they understand basketball. They do not. I'm going to get to specific quotes, and I want to take a moment to just give a shout out to someone that I have been very critical of, Sam Vecini. Now, granted, I did not watch your full podcast, but I caught your conversation with Samson Folk about Scottie Barnes' struggles, and I just want to say, because I know that we've had our back and forth a couple of times, and it hasn't been nice, and you probably hate my guts, and I've probably been a little bit unfair to you. I appreciate what you said. It wasn't rosy, but it was fair. I think it was really fair. And if I crossed the line in our conversation the last time we spoke, I apologize. Please take this as my sort of public apology. I really liked what you had to say today. I think it was insightful, and I think it was balanced, and it wasn't trying to perpetuate some sort of agenda. Okay? You talked about Scottie's struggles. You talked about his defense. You talked about what he does well, what he doesn't do well. By the way, can you guys let me know in the chat? Is my audio all right? I've had a few issues with the audio over the last few days, so just let me know. Just give me a thumbs up or tell me it's good. It could be better, and I'll adjust. Because to be honest, I can't really hear it properly. I'm not monitoring. To the specific point that I want to address, I want to read you some quotes from this because I want to tell you that this was brilliantly. Okay, thank you so much. This was brilliantly orchestrated, very cherry picked, very, very imbalanced. Incredible, by the way. Now, you probably did not think that so-called Scottie Barnes' biggest supporter on YouTube, I wear that badge quite proudly, by the way, would show up and refute the shit you're talking the day after he puts up 2 points at Madison Square Garden on 1 for 10. You probably thought I wouldn't do that. But I told you a long time ago, I don't punch down. I punch up. And the problem is, you guys exclusively punch down. You wait. You don't release this after he scores 17 points against Brooklyn in the fourth quarter and looks like some sort of demigod and looks like he's turned his season around, 26.5 points per game. No, you wait for the 2 bad games. That's when you wait. You had that quote. I guarantee whoever told you this that I'm going to read you right now, you had it. You've been sitting on it for a while. No one told you this yesterday. This is not current news. No, you have been writing this piece because the quotes you used have been gathered over months. I just want to ask why. Did he do something to you? Are you trying to do something? You're painting a picture? Let me tell you what's fair. Scottie Barnes has not had a good season. That is very fair. And I think if you watched my live yesterday, you can be very damn sure that I was not sugarcoating anything. I told you straight up, he should not have come in the game. I read somebody say today that Rob was blaming Nick Nurse for not bringing him back. Bro, why are you twisting what I'm saying? I said I blame Nick Nurse for putting him back in the game. That's fair, right? That's fair. He has not taken the step forward that you would have liked for him to see. I think that's fair. He hasn't played up to expectations, his own or yours or ours as a fan base. I think that's all fair. And if you keep it to that, let's say that we will stay out of each other's way. Let me tell you what I'm going to put you on blast, and I promise you I will put you on blast every time you do this. I don't care if I lose every follower because this shit gets repetitive, because trust me, you guys are getting pretty repetitive too. Let me tell you where it crosses the line. When you start painting a picture that's not accurate, you're painting a picture of a guy who didn't work hard. I'm going to read you the quotes. I'm going to feed you the quotes, okay? I'm going to read you some select parts here, okay? So the article headline, first of all, let me just get to the article headline. So here we have, what do you think when you see this? Scottie Barnes needs to work much harder over the summer to be an NBA elite star. Wait a second. You mean the same guy who 18 months ago might grow into a role player eventually at some point, 0-level scorer? Sorry, Sam, I had to quote that again because that was part of the narrative. That guy has to work much harder to become an elite star. Thank you. I appreciate that. But the fact that you choose to run with that as your headline, but it gets worse. There is every chance that Scottie Barnes will come to this realization either on his own or by it being hammered home by his bosses and teammates beginning next summer. You know what I'm getting a picture of? I'm getting a picture of a kid who doesn't work very hard. I'm getting a picture of a locker room that's sick of their youngest teammate not working very hard. And I don't think that that's an accurate picture or the one that you should be presenting. It's not like Barnes is not a good or might very well turn out to be a very good one. By the way, grammatical error. You need an editor, Doug Smith. He's got all the tools, great size, and basketball intuition. And as Masai Ujiri will tell you, every time Barnes' name comes up, he's just 21 years old, and lots of 21-year-olds don't quite get it at this point in their lives. Barnes doesn't need to be traded. He doesn't need to be benched or even taken out of the lineup. But having watched almost every game last season, about every game so far this season, it's hard to see any one area of the game that Barnes is better at his second year than he was in his first. Some select quotes peppered in. One was from Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet quote from quite a while back, actually. I believe it was the opening pressers, where he said that Scottie can be as good as he wants to be. This quote, which, you can take it however you want it. You can take it as Fred VanVleet calling Scottie Barnes out for not working hard if you're twisted in the head, or you can take it as a teammate saying that another teammate has all the potential in the world. I'm sorry. Do you realize that there are a lot of teammates who said the exact same thing about LeBron, about Kobe? That's high praise, and you have somehow twisted it into a critique. And I find that almost like, if I wasn't so sick of listening to, if I wasn't so disgusted by the nature of this article, I would almost be impressed by how well you did that. Then you take a quote from Kevin Durant. Let me here. Hold on one second. I'm gonna get this. Okay, Kevin Durant. You realize that you just got to keep working on your skill, keep crafting. Durant said, "You can easily get complacent and don't practice much. You've had some success, but you can relax a bit. You got to still put your foot on the gas to get better and find ways to get your individual skills better, but also learn how to work with your team. You get comfortable after your first year, but you realize you've got to put your foot on the gas and get even better in your second and third year. Now, I'm not the only person who found it very strange that the media was fishing for quotes about Scottie's struggles from other stars, because let me tell you, as a writer, this is what they're trying to do. Okay, let me tell you what they're doing. It's not going to mean shit coming from Doug Smith. That's just the truth, right? It's not going to mean much coming from Doug Smith. Where it's going to mean stuff is if it's coming from other people who have a great deal of credence and authority, right? Like last year, everyone was very complimentary of Scottie Barnes. They ran with that because he was playing well. Now they're asking these guys very pointed questions about him struggling. They're not asking him, do you think he's going to be good anymore? Because the answer to that, if you want to ask Kevin Durant or Jason Tatum if they think Scottie Barnes is good right now, you won't get the quote you want. Because what they're going to tell you is, hell yes, he's good. Do you have eyes? Are you blind? He's going through a bit of a slump. Sure, he might be struggling with something. We'll get into that. But specifically fishing for that quote and then adding it to this type of article, what you're doing is you're painting a picture of a very lazy young man. And that is inaccurate. And I think that I'm in no better position to tell you that that is inaccurate than you are to tell a national audience that it is accurate. Unless you were there, unless you were talking to him, unless you followed him, unless you worked out with him, Doug Smith, no offense, I don't think you can keep up with Scottie Barnes on a basketball court. I don't think you can keep up with him on a bowling court, to be honest. I don't mean to roast you, but this shit is getting disingenuous as hell. So, who is the Raptor Insider? I would love to know, because I have followed this team for a very long time, and I haven't seen things like this since the Richard Petty era. And that was really dysfunctional, guys. There were guys fighting in locker rooms. There were guys threatening each other. That shit was dysfunctional. And trust me, it showed on the court. And it's showing on the court right now. Trust me, if your locker room is not connected, it will show. Do you remember everyone clowning the Sacramento Kings for beating us and giving Harrison Barnes, that big gold chain or whatever? And they're like, oh, this is how people feel about this. This is how people feel about beating the Raptors. What a spin that was. No, that was an assistant coach's first NBA win. And that was a locker room getting together. And last night, after Pascal Siakam's 52 points, you saw a locker room that, to some extent, apart from OG Anunoby literally throwing water bottles at Pascal Siakam, which was really funny, you saw a locker room that was pretty together. A locker room that was celebrating one of their own, having a beautiful moment. You can't just talk about that, though, right? Because there is a segment of the audience that is wired for negativity, that they just want to read why the guy that they thought was going to average 20 points just dropped 2 points. So let's talk about that for a bit. Now, and Sean, MSJ, I will get to you in less than 2 minutes, guys. Hang tight. So, and to anyone else who wants to call, I'm here for you guys. I don't want to make this show too long. I'm trying to keep it under an hour just because I do want people to actually watch this. And I realize that some of those 2-3 hour ones can get very intimidating to even start. So I just want to say that to the specific point that Doug Smith brought up, that he's not better at anything, to him, I would say, you are wrong, my friend. Oh, God, I can't believe I just called you my friend. You are wrong, sir. I don't even feel right calling you sir. You are wrong, Doug. There we go. You are wrong, Doug. If you have watched every single game and you have come away with the conclusion that Scottie Barnes has not gotten better at anything, then, sir, you are wrong. He is. You should look at his catch and shoot numbers. Is it his fault that his team doesn't necessarily pass to him as a catch and shoot 3-point shooter? Not really. It was his fault 2 days ago or 2 games ago when he passed up some of those looks, and I was critical of that. I'm keeping it 100. Okay? If they don't pass to him, that's on them, because his numbers at 37% from there suggest that they should. Okay? Scottie Barnes, look, guys, to anyone who watches basketball out there, 3-point shots are not equal. Those Steph Curry behind the back fadeaways from 35 feet, those are not the same as Steph Curry catching it in the corner and just putting it up. It's not the same as Steph Curry in transition. It's not the same as Steph Curry. There are different types of threes. Luckily for us, we don't live in the dark ages of analytics. We live in the advanced, 2022 age of analytics, and we can actually go and dig into these numbers. And I implore you to pay $3 or $5 a month or whatever for B-Ball Index or anything you want, dunks and threes. Go to something that covers analytics and tell me that he hasn't gotten better. His passer rating, his ability to play make, his load, all of these things are so much better. You want to know everything that got better has nothing to do with his ankle, and everything that got worse has everything to do with his ankle and his knees. If you want to talk about paint finishing, do you think Scottie Barnes just like, I don't know, like some of y'all, I would love to, I mean, I don't want to say I would love to grab a beer with you, but I would like to just entertain a conversation and just wonder, what do you think this guy did in the offseason? What do you think he did? You think he just you think he just made advertisements? He just recorded the Bowlway ad? He just, he sat on Twitch? That's what he did with like an hour, 2 hours. This guy was in the gym all the time. But don't let me tell you that, right? Ask some of his teammates, the ones who are on good footing with him. Ask them how hard he worked. Ask Nick Nurse prior to the season how optimistic he was about Scottie Barnes. Nick Nurse himself. Now to those who say, hey, Rob, you're slanting. Okay, you're capping. Okay. Don't listen to me. Listen to Nick Nurse. The first time Nick Nurse saw Scottie Barnes when he came to Toronto, because Scottie Barnes spent some time, he spent some time at home. He spent some time going around the USA, various training things. He spent some time with Rico Hines. Then he came up to Montreal, came to Toronto. Remember what Nick Nurse said about Scottie Barnes. He looks like he's taking a serious step. It's almost a direct quote, but his implication was it's almost unrecognizable how much he's grown. I'm sorry, that was the offseason. So he wasn't lazy in the offseason. He did do the work, right? His handle is impressive. It wasn't impressive last year. It was one of the weakest parts of his game, in my opinion. His ability to just be able to do certain things. What he did against Brooklyn, he was not able to do that. Trust me. He was not able to do that. To take Ben Simmons off the bounce, Kevin Durant off the bounce, this is not a joke. These are not bad defenders. These are very capable, very good defenders. And you're taking them off the bounce, going to the rim over a double team, finishing. He could not do that last year. He is facing more attention. So here's all I'm asking. Call an ace an ace. Call a spade a spade. He's having not a great season. I will agree with you. His defense has definitely not been great in certain parts. His screen navigation has not been great. Talk about that. Don't blanket statement it. Don't lie about it. Because when you lie about it, people run with those lies. And because you write for the Toronto Star, God knows, I don't know how you write for the Toronto Star, but somebody hired you and continues to renew your contract to work at the Toronto Star. And so somebody believes that you're doing a good job reporting on basketball, or that you even know the first thing about basketball. And so people are going to take what you have to say with some credibility, especially when you start quoting Fred VanVleet and Kevin Durant. You're quoting all-stars to back up your point, but they didn't make your point. They didn't say what you said, right? They were talking about something else, but you inserted their quote into your article almost like very creatively to make a point. So here's what I'll say. I think, and this is my opinion, and you can absolutely disagree with it, and we can still be friends. It's okay. My opinion is, when I look at Scottie Barnes moving around the court, it doesn't look right to me. Looks heavy-footed, and he was never bursty to begin with. Okay, he was never twitchy to begin with. So there's a lot of possible answers for this. Number one, you can take the Doug Smith route, which is to say he did not work hard, which that doesn't make sense to me, because he's come back in much better shape. He came back completely chiseled and redefined. His upper body is so much stronger. The way he's moving guys, and kudos to Samson Folk and Sam Vecini, because they got into their podcast on Raptors Republic, and they talked about just how much bigger and stronger he's getting. I'm sorry, but that doesn't happen by a miracle. That takes work. That takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of 6 a.m. mornings. So don't question that. Now, I think the way he's moving on defense and offense shows me that there is some lingering pain throughout. So, to those of you who are keenly paying attention to these games and have seen, I want to say 15 to 14 times this season where he has gone up for a block or has really dialed in defensively, really aggressively pushed on someone, and immediately come up limping, hobbling, holding his knee, holding his ankle. Okay? That is happening. That's not fake. He's not faking it. He's not doing it for the cameras. Sometimes he will go and do it on the bench. And if you attend the games, you see it. If you really hone in on him on the bench, you will see it. There is constant massaging of that knee. And you can also see it in the results. When it's going right, there's like a little bit of burst, there's a little bit of pop. Defense, offense, he's really engaged. And then he tweaks something. And then the next game, you see it kind of go away. So you could ask, why is he not sitting? Well, I'm pretty sure if he asked to sit, he could sit. But he's chosen not to. Why? It's a good question. I don't know. Maybe the doctors have said this is nothing too serious, but it's going to bother you a bit and you're not going to be 100%. And maybe some guys are really good at playing at 90%. There are some guys who they can play with some aches and pains and it's not going to throw their game off. But with Scottie, someone who for whom everything is new right now. He's never been a go-to scorer, guys. Even at Florida State, he wasn't a 20-point per game guy. He's trying to become something new. And all of these moves that he's doing, all of these counters, all of these dribbles, all of these pull-ups, taking 4 threes, 3 threes a game, this is all new to him. This is all stuff he's having to learn from scratch. So when you have a game that hasn't evolved for over a very long time, you haven't even learned how to deal with an injury now offsetting some of that. I continue to believe that you will not have to wait till next season. You will not have to wait for a scolding from a coach. You will not have to wait for one of his older teammates to talk him down and teach him how to be a pro. Man, if you have followed Scottie Barnes for a long time, there's a lot of things you can question. You can question his jump shot. You can question his desire to score. You can question a lot of things. What you cannot question about Scottie Barnes is that he works extremely hard and that he is a very good teammate. Now, if you are going to keep it to basketball, I promise you, I'm not going to make any of these. But the minute you go beyond basketball, when you start poking at character, when you start questioning work ethic, man, unless you were in that gym every single time, you don't have a right to say that. And whoever told you, whoever your insider is, I don't think they do either, right? You know, Coach Thorpe, who did not spend much time with Scottie at all this summer, if any, was on Will Lew's podcast, and he was the one who initially got this rolling. Now, I think he said it kind of off the cuff. He said he needs to work a little bit harder in the offseason, something along those lines, without any knowledge, really, of how hard he worked, what work he did. You don't know. You don't know. Maybe he was working on developing a shot, so certain things in his game. Maybe he was trying to put together handles and counters. I have seen the progress, guys. I'm sure you have too. If you're really, really paying attention, you have definitely seen a much more creative handle package. You have definitely seen a smoother shot form that is a lot more consistent, and you have seen those shots go in more consistently. You have seen this guy catch and shoot. You have seen him. Truth, I've said this many times. When he was drafted, did you ever anticipate a 5 3-pointer game for Scottie Barnes? You couldn't have projected that in your wildest dreams. You know how I know that? Because even I didn't project that. Questioning a guy's work ethic like that, it paints a very sour picture for the fan base. And now, every single time he struggles, people are going to be like, he needs to work harder because they're parrots. 80% of people are not really capable of critical thought. Unlucky for you, I'm not one of those 80%. So now I'm going to take some calls here. Thank you so much to everyone who's commenting and stuff. Guys, I just want to say a quick thing. Yesterday, someone crossed the line in the comments. Now, we don't have a moderator, and I'm not practicing any censorship. You're free to talk shit to me, okay? Talk shit about me. Talk shit about whatever you want to say about me. Trust me, I'll read it later, and I don't care, okay? But do not, under any circumstances, and I swear, if I go back and I have to read it again, I will boot your ass and hide you from this channel. I told you I'm not going to do that when it's about me. But if you start saying derogatory shit about a caller, you better watch it, because there was a young lady on yesterday, Morgan. I want to apologize to you. And some people started saying some really stupid shit about her. And I got to tell you, it really bothered me this morning when I woke up and I saw what her boyfriend had to say. And I imagined if someone had said that about my girlfriend, if she had called in. It's not, it takes a lot of guts, guys, to come on and talk in front of people and know that 1,000+ people are going to watch this video. And I love that we're doing these call-ins, but please, for God's sake, keep it respectful. If you disagree with a caller, just say I disagree with the caller. Okay. Like, try to just be respectful. It's the internet. But like when we're here in this community, try to treat it like it's a living room. All right, first up we got Sean. Sean, how you doing?
Hey, Robert. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm good. You asked me a question as I took a bit of a drink of that beer. But yeah, so what do you got to say, man?
Well, I think a lot of this stuff, I mean, obviously is just super reactionary, right? Like people just kind of, venting their emotions about the game. But realistically, I think, Scottie's going to be good with just give him some time. Like we haven't even seen the full season yet. Like last season, we were trash in the first half and then really went on a hot run in the second half. So same thing might happen, especially once we, get our full roster back.
I agree. I mean, like, look, I mean, I really think that the burst is sort of missing from his game, and that burst and pop is very important for all the things that he's struggling with. Are you adding music to our chat? Sorry, Sean, you're gonna get this chat demonetized because your music isn't copyrighted. So I'm gonna ask you to please shut that down before I unmute you. Okay, Sean, please feel free to call back if I don't know if you're going through an emergency or some sort of crisis there, but yeah.
Emergency.
MSJ, what's up, man?
Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. Yeah, I've a lot of things on my mind about Scottie's game. Obviously, I think there's nothing really to be worried about necessarily. There's sort of like the dream of Scottie, and I think Doug Smith is the nightmare. He's just like, I read what he wrote, and I was, but let's look at it from my.
Wait a second. Did I just get rickrolled?
Better.
I just got rickrolled, didn't I?
And
sorry, MSJ, can you hear me?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I just got rickrolled,
yeah,
right? That was a troll call. Oh my god, that's so funny. Well, congratulations, Sean. That was actually my first ever troll call. Your parents would be really proud. All right, go ahead, MSJ.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So his I think coming into this season, I think in Scottie Barnes, I know where as a point guard, and he's now playing listed as a shooting guard.
MSJ, can I ask you to please call back again?
A lot of people,
MSJ,
maybe see him, they look at
MSJ,
him, and he looks.
Sir, I'm not hearing all of what you're saying, and I'm sure that our listeners are also not hearing what you're saying. So can you please do me a favor and just we'll hang up with you, and I'm gonna go to Marco, and can you call back? I hope we'll get a better connection next time.
Yeah, sure.
Just make sure you're a little bit closer to Wi-Fi. Oh wait, I can hear you now. Just try to speak a little bit. Okay. Go ahead. Hello? Okay. That's 2. Marco, please tell me you're not having any mic issues and you're not going to rickroll me, please.
No, I talked yesterday with you there.
I know.
So hopefully my mic is still working just fine. I got a 2-parter for you.
Sure.
I've been pondering this a little bit, and part of it is I think the pressure needs to be taken off the rookie. Like he's not
a rookie anymore.
He's not the first-year rookie, but still for 2-3 years you're still kind of the new guy, the young prospect. I still think of them in a rookie feel. The reason I say that is I think the pressure needs to be taken off them, put to, like I said, the second unit, on the bench. Now there's a rationale to that because I don't want them to be the 4th option or even trying to be a 3rd option.
Okay.
I'd like the pressure to be taken completely off them. This will take them off the media. Okay, like just start maneuvering them, positioning them away as one of these primary options. So the media, once again, they don't beat up on Banton. They don't beat up on, well, Malachi Flynn went through a bit of a thing there, but by putting him more to the back burner, allowing his development to happen, and just have patience with him. I understand where we know that his potential is going to go, but to take the pressure off him this year, to have more of that backseat role a little bit, and then he can continue his development without the added pressure. Now, the second part to it is, how is this going to be accomplished? Well, we need to really have, like, if OG is not going to be a second option,
Why
maybe
can't he be a second option?
well, he may or may not be, but I'm about to
I mean,
propose
he has
something.
been.
Okay, I'm gonna. Okay, now you know that from the past I've talked about maybe the Raptors would be better off to, like I said, undertake the tank. They want to put a fight for it, like you're saying. They bought themselves a little bit more life. So if they really want to put a fight to it, they got to beef up this roster. So I've been pondering what some of the other folks out there have been saying, the ones that don't want to tank just yet. And I thought to myself, all right, so there's a couple opportunities out there. Everybody's talking about the Jakob Poeltl thing, Miles Turner, Jakob Poeltl and Miles Turner. And those are doable, maybe. Before I go into picks, really, the other thing I was looking at was Kyle Kuzma and a filler as part of a Gary Trent.
Marco, I completely understand that you want to talk about trades, but I would really prefer to keep Scottie.
No, but the reason for that is to understand, to bring on board the talent that would allow for, like I said, second, third, without Fred Van Vliet being like having to be a third option. So move enough talent in there that really the solution ultimately is to take the pressure off Scottie by having enough talent in there.
I'm sorry, sorry to cut you off, but are you under the impression that Miles Turner or Jakob Poeltl would come ahead of Fred Van Vliet in an offense? Good.
Miles Turner possibly, not Jakob Poeltl. The reason is Miles Turner might be a harder get, but I do believe that we could get Kyle Kuzma.
I mean, Miles Turner is not exactly a high volume scorer for his current team right now.
He's not too bad with the 3-point shot.
Do you consider him the de facto third option on the Indiana Pacers? Because I don't. I think that they're the options for the Indiana Pacers right now are Tyrese and Ben Mathurin off the bench and Buddy Hield.
No, he's not the third option on the Raptors. Kyle Kuzma would be the third option.
Oh,
Raptors.
You're adding Kyle Kuzma.
Do you see what I'm saying? I'm saying there's two things happening here. One is we solved the Gary Trent thing to the Wizards with Kyle Kuzma and a filler. Maybe
Kuzma
there's
is also exactly in the same contractual situation as Gary Trent. However, he is.
No. Kyle Kuzma has one more year.
No, he is. He has a player option for next year, and he will decline it. Same thing as Gary Trent. Gary Trent technically also.
I didn't see it was a player option, but okay, fair enough.
You can absolutely look. Here's the thing, Marco. I don't want to. Don't necessarily want to dig too deeply into trades. I get the sentiment that you're bringing up, and to that I'll say I have really one question. Do you think that the Scottie Barnes that we are seeing right now is the one that we're going to see for the rest of the year if nothing else changes? Do you think that he will continue to average 14.2 points per game, dip in and out, score 26 one game, 2 1 game? Or do you
once again, I'm shifting the entire paradigm. Because I am shifting the entire paradigm. I don't want Scottie Barnes being on the front on the first unit at all. I want him in the second unit, off the bench as part of that second unit to take the pressure off him, so the media gets off his back, everybody gets off his back, and let him be like I said, I know we can't formally call him a rookie, but let him be the young player, the rookie, from my point of view. The first 3 years in the league, that's who you are, and you need that time without that extra pressure to properly develop. I mean, do some of the other young prospects get that? Did Shea Alexander, did he get this kind of pressure? It's his 5th year in the league. Did he get this kind of pressure?
Shea was also not a top 4 pick. I mean, you can go through the history of top 4 picks. I mean, Chris Paul was pretty much the marquee franchise guy. He was a top 4 pick. Chris Bosh, I don't want to say he got this much pressure, but trust me, he didn't really do anything to warrant disdain. I mean, I think he pretty much overperformed every year.
What was that top 4 pick we had there, and we just let him go now? in the off season. We tried him out. The guy that
Okay. Josh Jackson.
that's right. Now he was a top 4 pick, right?
He had a ton
So
of pressure.
what? There's no guarantee about top 4 picks.
No, I understand that, but we're not going to compare Josh Jackson to
No,
Scottie
I'm not
Barnes
trying to
because-
compare that. I'm just saying I don't care what pick he is, if he's a top 4 or top 10. The thing is, you got to let these young players for a few years actually go through a development process without this kind of nonsense and pressure. I can't believe this. I'm actually in agreement with you that this is all BS. What's going on here? Leave Scottie alone. Let him develop as a young prospect here. Right. I
Yeah,
mean, I used to be into hockey in the past, as far as
I can tell. Yeah.
like I said, the Maple Leafs decades ago ruined a lot of talent. All the way back to like Wendell Clark, pushing him in there, putting him in positions that was just too much. But
see, that's the thing, Marco. Like I before you even told me you were into hockey, I could tell you were coming from a hockey background, because this is probably a lot more common in hockey. There are farm teams. There is like this progression where stars will come along slowly in the minors, and I get that happens in baseball as well. But this is basketball, and
basketball has the G League.
I get that, but you're not sending Scottie Barnes to the G League. I mean, look, I firmly believe that his issues really my issue really with this criticism is that it's not necessarily fair. That's all. I don't care if you're talking about Scottie every single day in the media. I really don't. And I don't think, I don't speak for Scottie Barnes, and, I don't want to pretend to, but I don't think he would care either. If you say Scottie Barnes, another bad game, he'd be like, yeah, I did have a bad game. Great. And, one of the things that I really admire about him, he's remarkably self-aware. When he talks about what he needs to get better at, it's exactly what he actually needs to get better at.
Just do a what if with me.
Sure.
What if I was able to bring on board Kyle Kuzma and at least Jakob Poeltl?
I'm not starting Kyle Kuzma over Scottie Barnes. So that's where you and I probably.
He's 21 points a game right now.
But see, I don't care. Because if you put Scottie Barnes on the Pistons right now, he would average 21 points per game. I mean, I understand he's doing it with Bradley. Look, he may be further ahead, but offense isn't everything. Scoring isn't everything. Kyle Kuzma takes every single shot available to him. And you know what? He's having a really good year in a contract year. Color me surprised, right? But Kyle Kuzma,
he would be maybe the third option, Fred the fourth. What I'm trying to say is
Fred VanVleet is not taking a backseat to Kyle Kuzma ever in a contract year. I mean, if he's not taking a backseat to OG Anunoby,
who works the paint better? Kyle Kuzma would work the paint better.
I would love to tell you that's how NBA politics work, but it's not. Fred VanVleet has seniority here.
But are we trying to make a last effort to try to turn this around?
Yeah, you also have to have a team that's entire success model is predicated on defense, and you're talking about bringing Kyle Kuzma, who is a negative defender in my opinion, and not even close.
That's because of a bit of an attitude thing there in the situation he's in.
I think it's lateral quickness. He's never been a positive. He's never been a good defender. Have you ever seen Kyle Kuzma mentioned among?
He could be an acceptable defender with his size and his length.
Yeah, we have an acceptable defender in Gary Trent, and he's on the bench, right? So I'm just saying, like you were taking out a guy.
Gary Trent doesn't drive into the paint like Kyle would.
That's fair.
Have you seen him this year?
No, that's fair. That's fair.
So what I'm trying to say is you got Pascal Siakam as your number one, but you need some other options there. To, like people are saying, he needs a number 2 and maybe a number 3. Now, like you're saying, I agree. OG would be a number 2, but if not, he could be a number 3. OG is obviously a better talent than Kyle, but either way, we're taking pressure off. We're taking pressure off of Siakam, and at the same time, there's enough talent that Scottie can go to the second unit.
Honestly, I appreciate your sentiment, Marco. I definitely, obviously, if you can't tell, I don't agree that bringing Scottie Barnes necessarily off the bench or deflecting all the attention away from him is necessarily the answer. I think the answer is him getting healthier, him taking his lumps without having to take shots from the media, for the media to be fair towards him in all honesty, and for this team to work out its pecking order issues. And if you're talking about bringing in another guy like Kyle Kuzma, who's hunting for a contract, I think whatever chemistry issues you're having right now, I think they will only get worse. Anyways, Marco, thank you so much. I really appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
No, you take care of yourself, Robert. Like I said, I'm looking to protect the guy now. That's what.
I honestly want to too. I think we're both trying to drive at this from completely different angles, but I appreciate the sentiment, and you know what, like I wish more people out there could empathize the way you're empathizing with the idea of being 21 years old. Yeah. So thank you, Marco.
Yeah, you
Appreciate
take care.
Cheers. Larry the Legend, thank you so much. How are you doing, sir?
Hey man, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I didn't see that article until I just flipped on YouTube and saw you, and I just raced to read it. And it's upsetting to me, as it is to you, and I'm sure to a lot of other people. I have to say, I don't know that he's quoting an insider. His column is Raptors Insider, like he is the insider. And I think he's just come up with this theory, and he's perhaps talked to a few people that mentioned that, you know, he left Vegas, or he left the Rico Hines runs to go and play in a pro-am. You know, he went to you know, the Greens one in wherever that was in California, and went to one here in Toronto, right? And so you know, I just think he's Durant's quote is totally out of context. It's just bad journalism, and it just really pisses me off, because you know, it reminds me way back. I don't want to. It's not about me, but way back in '92 at the Olympics in Barcelona, you know, we had a guy who was a world champion in 500 meter K1 in 1991, and he didn't make the final in Barcelona. He came fifth in the semifinal, which meant he was the slowest qualifying fifth, and he didn't make the final. And Rosie DiMano wrote an article, and the headline was "Stroke, Stroke, Choke, Choke," and she suggested that he didn't work hard enough. And this guy, I trained with him every day. He put, like, nobody worked harder. And you know, just you get these journalists, they watch a lot of sports, but they don't understand sports. And Doug Smith's one of those guys. I've met him before. He's a nice guy, nice enough guy to talk to. You'd probably enjoy having your beer with him. But despite the fact that he's watched
quite a critic since 2003.
Right, I don't know how many basketball games has he watched since 2003, and he doesn't, and he hasn't learned anything about the sport. You know, he's watched a lot, but he hasn't learned about the sport, or he hasn't learned to appreciate what it's like for athletes.
I've always said that when you don't enjoy what you do for a living, it shows in your work. And when you love what you do, it really shows in your work. And I have just, I don't know why. I mean, like, I'm talking, like, I've never singled out any reporter the way I've singled him out since 2004. I mean, like, this is like a public thing. Like, I've been feuding with this guy since 2004 because I had a real big issue with how he covered the Vince Carter stuff. And now he's doing it again. And it's the same shit. It's the same slants. And it's not fair. Like, I don't mean to sound like the guy on YouTube who's like, leave Brittany alone. Look, man, like, I'll be the first person to tell you that Scottie Barnes is probably, like, he is very disappointed. I don't want to say he's disappointed because I don't know him. But I'd be very surprised if he was pleased with the season he's having.
I would agree.
Very surprised. Right?
I would agree.
But to then, you know, to take, it's like, to take that situation and to put a narrative on it, which seems to fit, right? I mean, if you didn't know him, if you didn't follow him as closely as you and I do, and if you didn't, like, intuitively understand the athlete's experience and understand the game of basketball, if you were somewhat of a casual watching the game, you'd be like, okay, well, this guy averaged 15 points per game his first season. Now he's averaging 14 points per game. He must be lazy. And he's on every commercial. That's probably pissing a lot of people off too, to be honest. Those Bowway ads started out as really cute, and now they're just getting angered. You know, it's triggering a lot of people because it's like, man, what's he doing recording Bowway? You know, people always have this idea of athletes, but, you know, I've been around athletes, even, like, you know, guys that a lot of people would say are scrubs. And I've talked about this extensively on this channel, that you have no idea how good these guys are or how hard they work. A friend of mine played for the Toronto Raptors in 2006, 2007. And most people probably walking around the city. I would walk around with city with him, and he was so underused in the rotation, people didn't even stop to recognize him, other than to know that he was 6'5". And it was so incredible to watch how hard he worked and how dedicated he was to his craft. I often used to say, if I could find anything that I love and devote myself to as much as you devote yourself to basketball, people just thought he was lazy. You know, the narrative out there of, well, why can't he get minutes? He must be lazy. It fits so well. And it drives me insane that it keeps working. It drives me absolutely mental, because there are some NBA players that I have had a very bad impression of, and then I've met in person and I've seen how they deal with waiters, or I've seen how they deal with people, and it's not for show. Like, you get them kind of off the cuff. And I'm like, man, you have been totally misrepresented. And I think Scottie Barnes is one of those guys, and I don't like that it's happening to him specifically, and I wish that it would just stick to the game. But as an athlete, I mean, you know, I think you would probably, you know, you're a coach, you're an athlete, you're an Olympic athlete. What you're seeing from him, you have mentioned before in a previous conversation that you and I had, that he looks like he's running around like an old man. I believe that's a direct quote from you.
Yeah.
How, you know, based on what you've observed, how do you think that an ankle or a knee issue could impact certain things like touch around the rim, defensive mobility, even a jump shot, especially when the jump shooter isn't necessarily a very experienced jump shooter who's just recently developed?
Right. Well, I'd say two things. You know, the first is that I think those things would have an enormous effect. I mean, basketball is a sport that's all about your legs. And
Agreed.
if you've got the base, you know, your base of support is impacted by ankle issues. And we've talked about compensation injuries, that, you know, if you're favoring an ankle, and eventually you're going to have a problem in a knee. And this is exactly what we've seen with Scottie. And, you know, like, this can have an enormous impact on lift, on like lateral movement. And these are things that we see him having issues with. I mean, screen navigation could be down to ankles. You know, being able to stay in front of the point of attack, you know, when he's defending point of attack, that could be lateral movement. Lift and his jump shot that could be affecting his jump shot. And even, you know, people talked about, oh, he's got a dunk pad, or he's not going up aggressively, or whatever. Well, you know, when you don't have confidence in your body like you do when you're 100%, you know, that's going to affect your ability to do those things. So I would say that, to me, it's very clear. But then, you know, you get people that say, well, he played great against the Nets. You know, he was moving fine. And what I would say to those people is, if you've ever had like a nagging injury, these are injuries that, you know, and I've had other people say, well, if he was injured, he wouldn't be playing. There's injuries that keep you out of the lineup, and there's injuries that
they're just soreness. They're
exactly. You can play through them, but they do affect your performance. And some days they're better than others. You know, like, I mean, look at how many days off did they have before the Brooklyn game from their previous game. I think that was a Sunday, Wednesday thing. Well, I would expect him to have a little bit more pep in his step in that game than he does, you know, when he gets 3 or 4 games in a row. Like, if you look at what happened, you know, they played in Toronto, then they went to Philly on a back-to-back, and then they had a day off, and then they played in New York. Well, you know, those injuries are gonna get worse again until he's had time to totally, you know, get rid of them. They're going to keep coming back and haunting him. And to me, it's very explainable. And yet, you know, and that has nothing to do with how hard he worked in the summer. We know he worked his ass off because we saw visual evidence of that all summer. And as you said, he came back chiseled. He came back stronger. He came back, and Nick Nurse was saying it. The coaches were saying it. His teammates were saying it. And the fact that he booked time to shoot a few commercials, which doesn't mean he can't do a workout that day, is ridiculous for people to jump on him for saying that. It's just, you know, these guys are in the spotlight, and I think a lot of people resent the money that they make doing what they do. You know, I mean, people tend to judge professional athletes more harshly than they ever judged me as an amateur athlete. Right. And but at the end of the day, they're athletes just like I was, or just like anybody else is. Scottie Barnes is a kid whose imagination was captured by the game of basketball at an early age, and he's dreamed about being in the NBA ever since then. And we know his dreams are big dreams. Like, he wants to be far better than he is right now. And I bet you it's killing him when he has a game like he had in New York. But I have to say, I had huge respect for him when they're interviewing Siakam after, and who's the guy that comes over with the
pours
Gatorade
water
to
on
dump on his
him.
head?
Exactly.
Pours water on
Exactly.
his
And he
head.
was
And
so
it's Scottie
happy.
with a big smile on his face, genuinely happy for him. Like, he is the best teammate you're going to find. He has so much talent. I hope people don't give up on him. And the people that are giving up on him now, too, by the way, are the same people that in the bubble were giving up on Siakam. Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I think Siakam fans and Barnes fans are pretty different. I think the chat last night sort of proved that the people came in the chat and was like, you know, what do you got to say? And it was a very toxic chat last night. I don't know if you caught any moment of it, but it was not great.
I caught a bit of it. Yeah.
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 I think that he has worked extremely hard, and I think that it's troubling to me to have somebody question that element of it. Part of that is because I think that it paints a narrative that every single time he struggles in the future, this is going to be the impression that he didn't work hard enough at it, right? Players struggle for a slew of reasons. It's not just about working hard. Sometimes it's about working smart. Maybe you did the wrong thing, and now you got to learn to do the right thing. Sometimes it's an injury. Sometimes it's a nagging issue. Sometimes it's an emotional thing. Sometimes it's just luck. I mean, there are games where Steph Curry has shot 2 for 9 from 3. That's just luck. Sometimes it's just luck. These numbers do tend to average out. I think that he will have a much better season in the second half, but I do agree with your point that with some rest, he has looked better at times. You know, that Brooklyn game, there was like pop, but he was on the verge of having a very bad game in Brooklyn, and then he just snapped it on in the fourth quarter. I think the best 40 minutes of Scottie Barnes, if I could compile like the very best 40 minutes that I've seen this year, and we're only 32 games in, is better than the best 40 minutes of him I saw last year. If I could just take the best 40 minutes worth of offensive
100%.
plays, you know, but the dips
we look
have
at
been worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why the
for
numbers
sure.
are averaging out.
I mean, if we look at that, yeah, I mean, if
Go
we
ahead.
look at that Atlanta game where he hit 5 threes, you know, that was his best game offensively, and he looked phenomenal. But you're right, the dips are bigger. The peaks and valleys, right? Like, it's not as even. The peaks and valleys are bigger, and and people tend to, you know, people have high hopes for him, and they have high expectations, and I'm sure he has high expectations for himself. But the people are focusing on the valleys, and but I think people are forgetting the fact, or not appreciating the fact, that he's not 100%. Like, I watch this guy move, and he is moving like a 15-year veteran. You know, I mean, he's Thad Young looks sprightly beside him some nights, and that is just doesn't make sense for like a hyper athletic 21-year-old who last year, you know, moved much better. So, you know, he didn't forget how to move because he didn't train in the summer. There's an issue there, and I wish the team would come out and say that he's battling through these injuries and he's still playing, and that would, I think, quiet a lot of. I know teams don't like to share their injury information.
They don't. Because they're afraid that other teams are going to attack it. But other teams are already attacking him.
Exactly, and because they know, right? Because they know. People know the game. Know. Exactly. And so if they wanted to take the pressure off Scottie Barnes, like your last caller, I love the fact that he's concerned about him and wants to take the pressure off him. But if you move him to the bench, he's a top 4 pick and a rookie of the year. Pressure is going to be on this kid forever. The way to take the pressure off him would be to disclose the fact that he's dealing with certain injuries and he's struggling through them. Boom, it's over. Public would be very understanding. Doug Smith would be writing about that instead of some slander. And I'm
pretty sure he would find a way to say that he's suffering through injuries because he didn't work hard enough to keep his body in check, and that's why he's going through injuries, right? I do want to take a moment to just address this comment. Mark C, it's bizarre how insecure Pensari is about Scottie. Straight up weird. I just want you to know, and I want you to really look in my eyes when I say this. There has never been a prospect that I have been more positive will be like a great player than Scottie. Like, It's Scottie and it's Kevin Durant. In my lifetime, those are the two guys where I'm like, come hell or high water, these guys love it too much and are too good, have too many advantages to be bad. So barring injuries, this is not insecurity. What this is, however, is me not wanting what happened before to happen again. Because this has happened a lot, by the way. In sports are about narratives. They drive narratives. And I got to tell you, Vince Carter did that one interview in 2004, which was misquoted and snipped, and the part of it that came out was, I didn't always try my hardest. Do you remember that? It was all over the news because it was validation for Toronto fans. And then the part of the thing that sort of led credence to that was that he exploded in New Jersey. The part that wasn't reported was that this locker room was so dysfunctional with him and Rayford, him and Sam Mitchell, him getting benched in the fourth quarter, and that the New Jersey Nets had Jason Kidd. Jason Kidd's supposed to make people at least a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right? So
right.
the disparity between 27 points and 15 points and the allegation and accusation that he dogged it and his own quote, when you put those together in a very powerful cocktail, what you generate is a fabrication and a lie. To say Vince Carter didn't try in Toronto is disingenuous and absolute horseshit. He's never had anything bad to say about the city. He's loved it. He's come back many times. To those who know him, you can definitely ask him. Like, he's been back many times. He has been an advocate and a great ambassador, much greater ambassador, by the way, than a lot of people that Raptor fans hold very high in Raptor lore. But to see what happened to him, it always bothered me. I was very young back then, 2004. How old was I? I was in high school, I was still a kid. I was 16 years old. I couldn't do anything much back then, but I feel like I can do something now. And when I see the painting on the wall, when I see the etching of him being painted as this guy who just is kind of entitled, bit of a brat, doesn't work hard, when these accusations started coming, it's not really the context. He's not quoting a guy saying Scottie Barnes is lazy. No, what he's saying is Raptors insiders had their eyebrows raised. Oh, that creates a little bit of intrigue, Kevin Durant says that people shouldn't get complacent. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so what are you trying to tell me, Doug? Well, you're trying to tell me that Scottie Barnes got complacent. He got high on winning Rookie of the Year, and that could be nothing close to the truth. For anyone who followed him, for anyone who trained him, for anyone who was in the gym with him, and anyone who knows him, could be further from the truth. It's like almost like, when he was asked, and I'll quote something that Scottie said. I want to say 3 years ago, he was on Overtime Elite, and he was having a conversation, and somebody asked him about being a 3-time gold medalist, something you would know about. He wasn't an Olympic athlete, but he did do those Team USA U16, U15 stuff. And he was asked about being a 3-time gold medalist. And he just brushed it off. He said, that's nothing. I got more. I got to do more. And he's like, USA on your chest? Gold medal? He's like, I got more. And that's exactly the way he approached Rookie of the Year. Didn't get complacent.
Exactly.
He went balls out. If you remember his end of year press conference, and I will never forget it, somebody said to him, so are you going to finally take some time to take a breath after this season? And he said, I already took my breath. It's time to get back to work. And he said it, and he meant it. One thing I really have always appreciated about Scottie Barnes, and I think that this is sort of a human thing, is that we tend to gravitate strongly to people that share traits with us that we strongly identify with. And I've always appreciated his transparency. There's no lying in him. When he was asked about coming off the bench, he didn't say, yep, it's great, whatever the team needs. His face said it. I don't like coming off the bench. Don't put me on the bench. And I love that about him. There's no lying in him. And so when he tells you that Rookie of the Year is great, but I've got much more. I'm going to be an all-star. I'm going to be all-NBA. Trust me, he put in the work to get there. Whether that work has worked, whether it's just an injury, we will see. But the season is long, and I just implore anyone out there to exercise the little bit of critical thought that you have, and just look at this article for really what it is, which is, I don't know how much more I can say about it, but it did not feel balanced.
It's
it did
trash.
Not feel fair.
It's trash.
Thanks,
it's just trashy journalism, right? And yeah.
I already. It's unfair.
It's very unfair. Hey,
Yeah.
I know you got other guys that want to get on
Yeah.
and say their piece.
Thanks,
so,
Larry. I really appreciate your insight as always.
I really enjoy what you're doing, and can't believe the rate at which you're doing it. It's fantastic. So thank you. Appreciate it. Okay.
Thanks so much for coming on, Larry. I really appreciate the conversation. Have a good night.
Okay. Cheers, you too.
Yeah. MSJ, is your mic working now?
I hope so. Is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
This is gonna be our last conversation for the night. How are you doing, MSJ?
I'm good. I had to switch headphones.
No worries.
Okay, the thing about it for me is forget about Doug Smith. But if you want to talk about Scottie Barnes' game, I think what he's trying to do this year is really difficult because
Agreed.
Maybe a Doug Smith looks at him and says power forward, and that's what he expects out of him. Like,
right.
But what he's doing with his handle, with his catch and shoot, like I mentioned before, is maybe he is like honestly going to turn himself into a point guard one day. And that's not going to take, next month. That's going to take a little bit of time. But if he's able to pull that off, if he's actually going to be a point guard, we're going to have like magic on our hands.
And so, I mean, his creation, like if you look at his, if you go to B-ball index and you look at his creation metrics, they're up across the board last year to this year, from passing difficulty to, how much he's generating mismatches on those passes, to the effectiveness of those passes, to the complication of those passes. Everything is up. Passing is one thing that does not really require your ankles. You can stand still and pass. You can move and pass. I can agree that it would be better if he could move faster, and I'm sure like he will get better as he gets healthier at even passing. However,
if you've ever had a knee injury,
I have.
I have.
And by the way, my knee injury was an overcompensation injury from my ankle sprain. So I completely empathize with Scottie.
I had a bad one where I knocked knees with somebody, and my kneecap underneath was all messed up. And the thing was, though, if I played the first half of a game, in the second half I was warmed up and my leg felt fine. So sometimes I wonder, like, if Scottie just needs to warm his leg up and he'll get going. Sometimes maybe it just doesn't work out like that. He gets some quick
we
fouls.
We have seen an alarming trend of him really dialing it into the fourth quarter. I mean, we saw that in the Dallas game and the Brooklyn game. I mean, we're talking about literally two games where he was almost going over for the entire game. Yeah. And then he just dialed it up and made it a great game in the fourth quarter, which is typically the most difficult quarter to make anything happen. He just made it happen. So I think you might be onto something. If I recall correctly, you're 6'5", right? You mentioned that last time.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just that. Like I had that knee injury. I remember it, and it wasn't going to kill me or anything. Nothing was going to go wrong with my knee. I went to a physiotherapist. They're like, it's these bubbly things underneath the kneecap that are a little effed up. And I played, and I got warmed up during the game, and sometimes I didn't. But if my leg got warmed up, I knew it and I could go. And I see that with a bit of Scottie Barnes as well. But just getting back to what he could become, I think people, like especially Doug Smith, I truly think they look at him and they think, how is this guy not playing power forward? He's like a beast. He could dominate in the paint, and they think he's weak. They think, why isn't he posting up? Maybe he should be able to do that.
I've always, this might not be a politically correct thing to say, but I'm just going to say it because, like Scottie, I like to speak my mind. I've always called this big black man syndrome.
It could
where you look at a very large African American, for whatever reason, whatever your perceived, racial bias that you have. I'm not calling it racist, by the way, just so nobody accuses me of that. I'm saying racial bias. It means that, and I say this as someone who had a mother who had this bias, by the way. She would often look at a very large African American man and say, well, he should be really good at basketball, right? He should be able to dunk down everybody. She would look at my mother was not alive when OG Anunoby was playing basketball, but I often hear it like in my own head, like while OG is playing, like my mom, if she was alive right now, because she's European, and they didn't grow up with black people, where they were.
I'm assuming Portuguese or
pardon?
Portuguese, maybe your last name. I don't know, but
my last name is Mišović, so it's Serbian.
Serbian. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So So the point here is like you get this idea in your head that because this guy is so much bigger than you are,
Yeah.
and because he's so much more chiseled than you are and so much more gifted than you are, that he should be doing what you would do with that athleticism, right?
Yeah, and
We all
me
have
just
an elevated sense of ourselves, right? So
yeah,
so for instance, like you tell me you're 6'5", right?
yeah.
I may have an idea of how much I wish I was 6'5", because I'm 5'11". And so I might say like, man, you can't dunk. I would have learned to dunk if I was 6'5". So you sometimes see a guy like Damon Stoudemire, Fred VanVleet, guys like this, right? People can
Uh-huh.
relate to these guys because they kind of look like normal guys. Like if you walk past them on the street and you didn't know them already, they're just normal guys. You're not going to stop and stare. I remember meeting Bol when I was 6 years old. That was fun.
Yeah.
I
I
mean, my
remember
God, right? I met Kevin Garnett for the first time when I was 11 years old, and that was fun too. I mean, that's a lie that he's 6'11". Like he's good 7'2", and it's just like, wow. And you look up at these guys and you're like, how can you not score 150 points a game? You know what I mean? But
yeah.
of course, this is not the reality of basketball. Obviously, as you play in the NBA, it just becomes. Somebody said unsubscribed. Why are you unsubscribing?
People don't
mean,
like
just
the truth, honestly. The other thing that I would tell people, just because it's Scottie Barnes' career, is that it is his career. And if he
right.
wants to be a point guard, if he has dreams of Magic Johnson or something like that, I don't know. But if the Raptors say no, and I've said this on YouTube comment sections and people have like laid into me, but I'm thinking, you know, like it is his career. Toronto's a nice city and all that, and a great team. And I've been a fan since day one, but
Right.
but the thing is that it's his career.
Right.
And he's obviously said, like, look, I have a vision for myself, and it's hard to take away someone's dreams. And if it's Scottie the guard rather than Scottie the forward, then
Right.
that's what Scottie's going to pick long term. It's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is like when you look at athletes who are gifted, right? Like Vince, right? He was gifted. He could jump to the ceiling. So you often look at a guy like that and you say, well, if I could jump, you know, there was a huge controversy. I don't know if you were watching the Raptors in 2003, right? But there was this entirely huge controversy about Vince not dunking.
Right. He wanted to shoot threes. That was the
he wanted to shoot a lot of threes, and people were like, okay. So the other day I heard Jack Armstrong, who nobody's accusing of anything, but I just want to say that I heard him say something very similar to what people were saying about Vince back then, which he said, you know, if I was Scottie Barnes, I would go into the paint and, you know, why is he shooting threes? And I just remember that, and I remember thinking that, and I'm like, man, are we still in 2002? Are we in 1999? Like threes are a good shot. Like we like threes now. What are you talking about, Jack Armstrong? He shoots.
Well, do you remember what Vince said though? Do you remember what Vince said to that?
Dunking is overrated. I remember that completely. I was there.
Yeah.
And what's crazy to me is like that's what people saw him as, and they were like, if you can do this, why don't you do this all the time? And what they didn't realize was that he learned very early, especially through all the injuries that he went through and all the time that he missed, was that he could not play like a crash test dummy forever. That if he wanted a long career, right, in the NBA, that he was going to have to develop this jump shot. And he did. To his credit, you know, he didn't come out of North Carolina as like the greatest three-point shooter, but he became a really good three-point shooter throughout his NBA career. And that's what allowed him to play the game until he was 43, man. If he was just a dunker, he wouldn't have played past 32. And I mean, like, kudos to him.
Yeah, he said that he wanted to be known as a scorer, not a dunker.
Yeah.
And I think in his mind, like getting back to the dream of who he wanted to be as a basketball player, yeah, he was a dunker for sure. He knew that, but he wanted to be a scorer. And there's a difference between someone who can jump 45 feet in the air or 45 inches in the air and someone who can actually, you know, learn to be a scorer in the league.
Right.
Like I sometimes like I think back to when I played, and I could dunk a basketball, and there was a few moments where I was able to pull that off, but the other team wanted to kill me after I did it. You know, and that's what probably Vince faced. He realized, like you said, if I'm going to be dunking all these teams are going to take my head off. They're not going to like this. And so what's my other route? Well, I want to be a scorer. I want to actually learn how to play basketball, the footwork and everything to be a scorer, a three-point shooter. And he stayed in the league a long time. He could have won a championship somewhere, I'm sure, but he didn't.
He unfortunately always showed up after they had made a finals run. It's so weird, right? He showed up in Magic the year after they showed up finals, Nets the year after, or 2 years after they went to the finals. It's so weird.
Yeah, he just got there. He went to the after party and it was just shutting down every time.
But it's like, I mean, to look at Vince's career, I mean, if I had a son, I would tell him to look at guys like Thaddeus Young and Vince Carter. I mean, Vince, of course, an extreme peak, right? Like the highest value of a replacement in the league in 2001, superstar everywhere, you know, really like high peak. But I think that the median was great. Like for Vince, like to the guy who, like, I mean, I think it was just like, I mean, I wish I could talk to Vince again, because I remember talking to him once in 2005, and it was just he's such a cool person. And I wish I've tried to reach out to him plenty of times over the last 2 years. I'm just like, man, I just would love to talk to you again about this. But I'm like, I wonder how much all that he's not durable, all that shit. Like, I wonder if like there's a shrine in his house of all the articles that said he wasn't durable.
I don't think so. With him, no, I don't think so. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's an actually very, very smart person.
Yeah.
And I think when you're playing professional sports, you know, intelligence isn't, it helps, obviously. There's a lot of great players who are obviously very intelligent, but there's also an element to basketball that people, I don't think, understand watching on TV, is the physical aspect, where, you know, basketball is an extremely physical sport.
Right.
And I think he realized, and maybe this is a little bit of his softness to it, but I think he realized, like, I want a long career out of this. I do want to win, but I'm not gonna sacrifice my whole career, my body, whatever, to appease like a Doug Smith. And I think that was smart of him. He had a great career. Like, is he in the Hall of Fame?
He certainly should be, because I'll tell you that dunk contest means probably a lot more to some people, like in terms of its impact on basketball. Like, I often look at Allen Iverson and like how he impacted basketball. Also, I just want to address one quick thing, like to the chat. Like, I almost like I'm watching it, and I'm like, it keeps going, bro. I'm not saying like, I can't believe that someone would misconstrue what I just said as racial or even racist. What I'm trying to tell you is that there are pockets of this world that unfortunately look at a 6'7" guy with chiseled arms. It doesn't matter if he's black or white, but typically, especially if he's black, and say, why don't you just destroy everybody on the court? There is an idea. Like, if you don't think that narrative exists, look at how people have treated Zion. Look at how people have talked about hyper athletic African Americans. Just look at it. Go through the history of the league and just look at, especially physically gifted, LeBron James, Zion Williamson. You don't think that some of the people who are writing about this have a little bit of envy and a little bit of hostility, and there's some subconscious crap in their head about like,
look
why don't they dunk everything? If they can dunk everything, why don't they dunk everything? It doesn't necessarily extend to black guys. It just, unfortunately, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, in the NBA, you know, typically when you talk about generational athletes in the NBA, they have been African American. Wilt didn't have the greatest press relationship either. And to be honest, that's one guy who often got criticized for losing. And it's like, well, you know, he's such a loser. How much of a loser is he really? You know, I mean, but people would look at him and they say, oh, there's a track and field star, and there's this, you know, the guy that can jump over everything. And, you know, so that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's brainwashed, you know, stuff that's washed down from generation to generation that, you know, and I mean, like, look, I played basketball, and there were often guys who were big, you know, and maybe they were pretty athletic, but they weren't that great at basketball. Like, they were 6'5", 6'6", right? Like MSJ, you're 6'5", right? Like, and they would maybe not have a deep passion for the game, and people will be really hard on them for some reason. Be like, oh, well, you could do this and you could do that. And it's like, okay, you're projecting what you would do if you had that height, if you had that athleticism.
And I think that's what they're doing with him. I think that's what they're doing with Scottie. I honestly think after you read Doug Smith and you hear a few things, I think what they're doing is they're projecting what Scottie should be in the league, which is a power forward. Like, let's not get that confused. He really should be a power forward.
You think so? I think he should
I think that he should be based on the appearance. That if someone looked at him, they would say, "Oh, he's a power forward."
Yeah,
but in his mind,
6'8", 240. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but the problem is for those people that his mind and his desire is to be a point guard. Absolutely. And what I would say is that if in the next 2 years, and I'll give it 2 years for sure, if the Raptors can let him develop into a point guard, he'll stay here. And if they don't let him develop into a point guard, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of money he would walk away from. He probably wouldn't, but we have to let this guy develop into the dream that he has in his head. That's
Right.
what I would say, because that's
Yeah.
what drives that. The dream drives the action in sports.
I agree completely, and he has always envisioned himself as a point guard. If you look at him on
Yeah.
Instagram, it says 6'9", point
guard.
guard, West Palm Beach. The
Yeah, and
three
it's
things that
exciting.
he
I
is
don't-
affirming. You know, he's that's an affirmation. I don't know if you guys know this, but like, you know, in reality, there's a lot of people who are going to overwrite your existence. They're going to tell you you're things that you're not. They're going to try to convince you that you're not what you are, and ultimately, there's very easily, you know, I'm sure he's faced, you know, like, guys, like, there's a reason he went to Florida State and not Oregon and not all these other schools, because ultimately Leonard Hamilton bought into the idea of him being a point guard. That's really the deal.
Yep.
So you got to understand that the vision is very clear. He does not see himself as a center, power forward, setting picks for guys. He'll do it for a while, but that's not the vision he has for his career. But you know what? Every single player on this team had a vision for their career, and some of those guys maximized those visions. I'm pretty sure Gary Trent Jr., when he was a kid, imagined himself hitting fall-away fadeaways. I'm pretty sure Pascal Siakam, when he first, you know, discovered the game at 17, 18, had visions of himself crossing up guys. And, you know, he's often talked about, you know, following guys like Kobe Bryant and Kevin Durant. Well, that's very clear in his game, which is very ISO dominant, very mid-range heavy. So everyone develops a vision. Scottie developed that vision as a child, you know, watching games with his dad, watching old Laker tape, and he saw himself as Magic, not Kareem. Yeah. Right? That's just it. So you're trying to turn him into Kareem, you're trying to turn him into a small ball center, a pick and, you know, you're trying to turn him into Reggie Evans. Probably not going to work. And he's probably not going to be happy about it. And I don't blame him for it, because, you know, he's talented enough to do that. And I think that he's taken major strides. Anyways, MSJ, thank you so much. Do you have any final words?
No, I'm just looking forward to, in 2 years, when Scottie Barnes is developed into the player he wants to be. It's going to be very amazing. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I honestly agree. And I can't wait for it either, because, you know, I'm not going to say I told you so to a lot of people at that point. I'm just going to be happy to see this shit stop. Like,
no,
to
you
be
just
honest,
smile.
Like, this just, I smiled when you said 2 years from now. I'm like, man, because it's like, I just imagine how much work he's going to put in over those 2 years, and I'm just happy to think about it.
Yep.
Anyways, MSJ, thank you so much. And for our last caller of the night, we have FA from Wake Forest, who we didn't get to talk to last night. Hey, FA, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? I was just calling to just listen in, and great conversation. I think I joined pretty late. I just going to bed. I'm like, okay, let me see what's going on. And I agree with you. I think a lot of stuff going on around Scottie. They should just leave this kid alone. Like, people need to understand what patience, right? I was looking at the stats today. His home stats versus the stats away, they're like night and day. So I don't know what's going on there. But if you look at other second-year players too, even Jalen Green, right?
Yeah.
It shows like 57% at home and about late 30s or early 40% away, right? So people need to understand patience. Like, everybody's screaming Pascal, right? These are some of the same fans that were, and I'm going to say this, I don't care, we're telling Pascal to go back to Africa after the bubble, right? All the same.
That shit was disgusting.
The same fans, but now everybody's hailing Pascal because he's scoring 52 points and stuff like that. So the real fans know that, okay, you got to be patient with it. He's 21 and this is his second year. I understand that in some games, right, Scottie is not really tuned in, because when he really wants to play defense, when he has his feet all squared down and his base low, he really plays good defense. So the people don't understand the mental part of the game, right?
Have you played basketball?
Sorry?
Have you played basketball?
I have. My kids are basketball players in high school and professionally too. I've done I've worked with mental health patients, or I've done mental health stuff, and I have a lot of folks that in the mental health space, right?
It's always interesting, because, like, when I dig into the background, or whenever even I asked about the background of the people that I really vibe with, or the people in this community in general, like, I'm always amazed at how consistently amazed I am by how much of a background they have in basketball. And that's usually, for me at least, a very, very strong indicator that I'm speaking facts, like I'm speaking to the right people, because
Like it's
I'm obviously not
interesting.
speaking to the 80%, right? I'm obviously speaking to the 20%. I know that. But I will ask you a question as a person who's played basketball, and you said basketball professionally, right?
No, like in high school and a little bit in college. Yeah.
Okay, so in college basketball, if you had a knee injury, right? Like if you had the knee injury that Scottie has, do you think it would be hard to get low in a defensive stance?
So what you just said right now, I have when I was pretty active in high school and stuff like that, my right knee is pretty much damaged because obviously I'm from Africa, right? So I played basketball there and did a lot of soccer and the rest. So okay, let me take a step back. 3 weeks ago, my son had a back. He's like he's 6'5" and he plays power forward. Well, he doesn't want to play power forward, but they put him in power forward because he's the tallest guy on his school
Yeah.
team. And he had a lower back pain, right? He couldn't make a layup. You understand? And this lower back pain obviously now gravitated, and before you know, he started having left knee pain. So I get what you're saying, right? And that is my struggle, right? Sometimes you have to save these young kids from themselves. And that is where, if you look at Scottie, right, like this guy literally injures his ankle and he misses 1 or 2 games. Realistically, you're supposed to expect him to miss at least 1 or 2 weeks, but I don't know if they're pushing him to play because of all the other injuries, or if Scottie is trying to force himself to play.
I can tell you from someone who's followed him for 5 years that he's just someone who doesn't take time off, and it's just ingrained in
but they
him, right?
have to save him from himself because the injury he had before the preseason, right?
Yeah.
That is the effect that we're seeing till now, and it's going to linger throughout the season if they don't allow him to rest. Because you can see that there's some games that he has the bounce, and the next game you can see that okay, he's dragging. And I was watching the replay of when what's the name of this guy from Golden State literally blew by Scottie, and I watched another video of Scottie when he was in high school, and with his base, like it was night and day. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So long story short, they have to be patient with this kid, and if he's injured, let him heal, please. You have to think about the longevity of his career instead of the short-term goals of maybe Nick Nurse wanting to make the playoffs and everything. And you can see them. Same thing with Van Vliet, right? Everybody is screaming, no, they blow with Scottie's defensive stance and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can literally go back to the game yesterday, even though Van Vliet scored 28 points, of players blowing by Van Vliet. Like literally, even Pascal. Pascal is not a great defender. He uses his hand a lot when he wants to defend. Like you can compare OG with the other. Pascal scores a lot. He wants to get his points, right.
Right.
I know he had a great game yesterday, but when Kylari left, you heard what he said, right? That there was confusion on whose team it is. Now it's clear that it is my team, right? And you can see that kind of tension and everything. And maybe Scottie not trying to cross into their space. That's why when Pascal holds the ball in the middle, Scottie just goes to the corner. Like that shouldn't.
Yeah, and I mean he's respectable in the corner. Like he's really respectable as a catch and shoot shooter. He's really good.
It is good, but it takes him out of the game.
It does if you don't pass to him, right? Like
it's not only him. It does if you don't pass to him and the other players. Like even OG said, sometimes they take him out of the game and all he does is play defense. Move the freaking ball. Let everybody fine. 52 points, you win the game, right? But you're gonna win the next game. You're not gonna play.
Here's the thing. Like, there's another instance of chemistry issues going on in the league, which is Rudy Gobert in Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
And their record without him and with him would make you think he's the worst player in the NBA. The on-off splits are incredible. I think they're 7-0 without him. So it's like they hate him. Like it's very obvious. Like I don't want to. It's not a hot take. Like they hate this guy. The way that they talk to him, the way that they yell at him, the way that just it's all going for him. It's so disastrous, and it's politics.
Yeah, I was looking at that yesterday too, right? But it's the same thing with Ja Morant last year, right? With or without Ja Morant, or even are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I think I lost you for a second. Yeah, even when Kawhi was in Raptors, right? Without Kawhi, we were 22-7, I think, right? But without Kawhi, we couldn't have won the championship. So it happens, right? Because you can even see in Raptors game, Nick
But I
Nurse
think in
will
this case, like you're
even
seeing
in
body
Raptors game,
language.
Nick Nurse will remove Scottie Barnes, and
Mhm.
you see the game going south, and immediately you put him back because of his impact on the game, right?
Mhm.
Everybody wants to see him scoring 30 points, but that is not Scottie Barnes. Scottie Barnes is a team player. And I'll say this again, I think he needs to have a little bit of selfish bone in himself to strive and to succeed in Toronto. That for because it's you can see Pascal always gives the ball to Van Vliet, or when Van Vliet is carrying the ball, he gives the ball to Pascal. Gary Trent Jr. always gives the ball to Pascal or Van Vliet. Like OG is like that's why I guess OG and Scottie Barnes. In all honesty, I think the management they have a really, really difficult decision to make, right?
Right.
Because the timeline of Scotty and the other two quote unquote leaders, they're not likely going to be the same because
Right.
they're not really involved in. And
Yeah.
if only Pascal and Scotty can play like Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown, and they can literally like I was looking at the game yesterday. Once Pascal makes up his mind, he doesn't pass the ball. This guy was like he doesn't pass the ball. He must shoot that shot. Find the shots were falling him yesterday. Great game, but it's not going to be like that in the next game. You're playing Cleveland next, right? With all the tall guys in the middle, we're going to see
Yeah.
and all the fanfare. I think then everybody
I
will
mean,
start turning
to be
down.
to be completely fair, New York also has supposedly one of the better paint defenses in the league with Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hardenstein. These guys are supposed to be really good at protecting the paint.
Yeah, but
I just they
they were
can't
playing
switch on him.
back to back, right? It was the
Yeah,
second night of a back to back, and one of the other players was injured, so obviously they didn't have their full team. So
yeah. Like, look, Efe. What I'm trying to do here is be fair, as much as I can be, right? Like, as much as I can be fair to Pascal and Fred, and OG. I want to be as fair to Scotty and try to create a sort of cohesive because I feel like as I read some of the comments, like it's very divisive right now, and unfortunately that's what happens when teams struggle. Everybody needs a scapegoat, everybody needs somebody to blame. So it's either your narrative is Fred and Pascal hog the ball, hunting for a contract. Gary Trent's not shooting well enough. OG's not shooting well enough. Scotty's taking a slump. Nick Nurse is trash. Masai's overrated. You need an explanation because I mean at the end of the day, that's why we watch the news, right?
yeah,
Stock
but
market
yeah,
crashed. Tell me what
but
happened.
I think as a coach, right,
Mhm.
from watching Scottie Barnes, right, he especially on the road, if he doesn't get involved early,
Mhm.
he's literally out of the game. He takes it out of the game. Like in the beginning of the game, right? Everybody's saying Scottie Barnes shot 1 for 10. People forgot that he missed the first four shots because he was now rebound and put back and rebound and put back. I think it was 0 or 4 really
Yeah.
quickly in the first like 3 minutes or 2 minutes of the game, right?
Right. That's fair.
And
Yeah.
then he missed the other. Yeah, so everybody forgot that and say, oh, it's one of them. But if you really watch, forget about the boss score and everything. If you watch the game, you can know what happens, right? And if you look at a trend, when he doesn't get involved early in the game, he's literally out of that game. And as a coach, to be honest with you, this is where Nick Nurse needs to manage the game better. Get some players involved at the beginning. Like even Pascal. Pascal scores most of the points in the first half. In the second half, because obviously gets tired and everything is short.
Yeah.
So you need to really manage the different players and the different times that to be able to get the best out of your team.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you. And look, like personally, as a player, my philosophy was always to get as many of my weapons going at once, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
because it makes the offense a lot less predictable, right? So if you can get OG an early touch, you can get Scotty an early paint touch. If you're a great player, you should always be aiming to do that. You can see Kevin Durant, how he encourages Yuta Watanabe on the bench, even in huddles. You're seeing him like, he's passing to him for clean, open looks because that's what stars should do because what that does is it makes the stars that much more potent in the fourth. that when I often refer to the game within the game, I've never made a video about it, but that's really what I mean. That is the game within the game. The game within the game is the chess match that goes on between a star and the opposing coach, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Sam Mitchell versus Kobe Bryant. Well, Kobe Bryant won that matchup, but the 82 points was basically a scheme from Sam Mitchell saying, you can't score enough. We're just going to
beat
guard
me.
you one-on-one. We're going to guard you with Jalen Rose, Mo Pete, Chris Bosh, etc. But we're not going to send a double to you. And Kobe Bryant was like, oh, I'm not getting double tonight? That's your chess move? Okay, 82 points on your head. And, you know, that pretty much made the Raptors a clown franchise for like 3 years. I swear to God, every time you told someone you were a Raptor fan, people would somehow manage to bring up 82 points within 12 minutes of that conversation starting. And so I just think that sometimes, you know, at the end of the day, like the more people you can activate, the more unpredictable you become, you know, and as I've mentioned 150,000 times, I should just wear I should wear a shirt that says basketball is a game of rhythm, because it really is. And yeah, I agree with you that certain players do fall out of rhythm if they sit too long, if they don't touch the ball for too long, if they're not playing a style of basketball that's conducive to them. You know, one of the stats that is often quoted is that the Raptors are a certain number of points better in the half-court offense than Siakam. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was 7.3 points per 100 possessions better in the half-court offense with him. And man, if you want to make the case that means that Siakam is the best player on your team, which he undoubtedly is, then that's a great point for that. I could also make a case that, you know, in his absence, the players on this team have often taken turns reestablishing the culture of play style he's already established. And I just think that when you play that way, it really leans into certain guys' skill sets and it leans away from other guys' skill sets. Like let's say, I'll give you an example.
I think everybody forgot that. I don't want to make this edition Pascal, let me be honest, right? But the team was 5-5 with that when Pascal was injured, right? But since he came back, they've only won 2 games. I'm not saying it's his fault, right? But
they had a soft schedule. They had a soft schedule when he was out too. That makes a difference. In fairness,
yeah, but even when he came back, the schedule has not been tough. The next few weeks is going to be really, really tough, right? So I think the ball needs to move. What they're doing right now, even if it's going to win them some games, it's not going to work in the playoffs. It is.
I'm generally in agreement with you, Fa. I totally agree. Do you have any final thoughts on this?
Lastly, I just want to look at Nikola Jokic, right? Look at his first year and his second year. Look at where he is right now. All I think fans need to understand patience. Don't make the same mistake that Toronto made by letting Tracy McGrady go. Thanks for your time, and I think you're doing a great job. Keep it going.
Thank you, FA from Wake Forest. Thanks as always. And our final caller today will be Peter. Peter, how are you?
Hi, Robert. How are you doing? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Number one, I want to say thanks for what you're doing.
Pleasure.
I like your passion and how you're getting at it. But then I had to stop listening.
What happened?
And I just stopped listening. And I couldn't do it. And then I saw you on tonight. I had to get back on. And I want to just get my 2 cents worth in, if that's okay.
Sure.
I want to talk a little bit about, what's his name? Scottie.
Okay.
Scottie Barnes reminds me of a guy that I used to coach. I coach distance runners, not basketball. I have helped develop 7 Olympians. I have worked with high-level athletes. And as you know, I mean, I love some of your introspective stuff. I've had a chance to take a look at it.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Now, here's the thing. This guy used to coach as a Jamaican. His young man, his name was Clive Hamilton. Not very intellectual. Everything came from the heart. If you asked him to describe how he ran or he couldn't do it. I think Scottie is much the same. If you come at Scottie's not a very intellectual individual. You just listen to his interviews. The guy,
I think he's a little bit more intellectual than I've always felt that he was more intellectual, and the reason I say that is because I've sort of learned because of where I've grown up. I mean, I had experience. I grew up in Washington Heights. I grew up in Scarborough. So to me, you know, the way people talk sometimes can undercut what they're saying, right? If some people talk a certain way, right?
And you could be right, but let me disagree. I think
Sure.
you're dead wrong. When
Sure.
this guy comes up the floor of the ball,
Mhm.
he's not looking for let's say where that guy's spot is or what he's doing. That guy, and he intuitively moves with the ball. He moves and he moves through pressure, into pressure, he moves around it, he spins. The guy is
Sure.
amazing. The guy is amazing. Now,
Mhm.
all of a sudden, if this guy that I coached, if I started giving him too much data, too much information, and I think that's what we fall into, you don't hear it. You don't hear it. Now, if you keep him happy and if you keep him working and like, look at what he did in the summertime. The guy was amazing. And but what has happened? All of a sudden, the critics come out. And that's why I had to sort of back off a little bit because I didn't like all the critical aspect. Not that you have to be ultra positive, because that makes me, I get a little gunky with that as well. But like we all have a bright side and a dark side. You can't let Scottie drift into the dark side because it's very difficult to bring him back. This young guy that I did work with, he was a nothing runner. He ended up running for Jamaica at the Commonwealth Games in the 10,000. He then went to the World Track Championships or the cross country championships in England, and he was amazing. And you know what our catchphrase was? It doesn't really matter if you win, Clive. It doesn't matter if you win. Make them pay. In those days, 15, 20 years ago, you would go to a road race and it would be $20,000, $15,000 for the winner. All the guys with a preponderance of fast twitch muscle fiber would wait until the end and just kick by people. Clive, make them pay. The guy was amazing. I think Scottie is much the same. He's lucky to have a guy like Fred Van Vliet on the court with him. The guy's like a coach on the floor. I am very impressed with him. And with Fred, I really like the team. I like the whole team just the way it sits right now. Like good Lord, when they played, they lost those 2 in a row. How many guys were they missing?
A lot.
Yeah, and I don't know. It just shut me down. It needed to shut me down. I think we've got a tremendous group of players, but we haven't had enough of a stretch to allow them to operate.
I'll tell you. Sorry, Peter.
No, go ahead.
So basically, I remember a kid I grew up with, right, in Washington Heights, and I mean, this is sort of thing.
Washington Heights, clue me in. What's I don't know.
It was a let's just call it a bad part of New York when I was growing up, right? A lot of violence, a lot of robberies. You don't go out. Like I remember asking my dad one time, why don't we have a bed? Like all the other kids have a bed. Why do I sleep on a mattress or on the floor every night? And he didn't even mince it. He just said bullets. That's what he said. Bullets, strays coming through the window. You got to sleep underneath. So that's how we grew up. And so the kids that I grew up with, I thought that a lot of them were really smart. You would see it in certain things. You would see it in like maybe how they picked up things, like how they we play chess or checkers or whatever, and they pick it up really quickly. But then the way they would talk, right? And because of a lot of our teachers were white, the way that they would talk, maybe the teachers would think like these kids are not super smart, right?
Okay, no,
and sorry,
I didn't. Okay, go ahead, finish. But
yeah. So one of those kids, his older brother, ended up. I can't say I'm not baiting him out because he actually ended up going to prison, but he ran pretty much one of the biggest drug pipelines and illegal narcotics pipelines across the United States.
Wow,
it was incredible. Like this guy was raking in millions of dollars, and everyone knew about it. And he didn't get caught for like 3 years. And my point here is that I always looked at that guy, especially as I reflect in hindsight, and I reflect against him, and then I reflect against a guy like Warren Buffett, and I think to myself, if I met these two people, they wouldn't be in the same room, but they should be. They could have changed places had they experienced different things growing up in their life. And so I think sometimes, when you look at someone like Fred VanVleet or someone like Cade Cunningham, I think that those are two very good examples of players who have I want to be sensitive when I say this. I mean, they do have a different upbringing than Scottie Barnes. Let's just put it that way, right? Like they have a different ethnicity.
Scottie is not stupid.
Oh, absolutely not. And I'm not accusing you of saying that he was stupid, but like, let's just put it this way. Like, for me, intelligence is how quickly you pick up things. That to me is intelligence.
Okay.
Like it's like pattern recognition. Like I tested gifted at a very young age when I was in grade 1 in New York. They used to do a statewide test and stuff. I tested in like the 99.99999th percentile when it came to Canada. I tested like top 50 in Ontario. Like, I've always been really smart with math. And so I appreciate the genius when I see the genius. And typically, to me, genius is about how quickly you pick up things, right? Like how quickly do you spot patterns in certain situations? How quickly can you apply the lessons you learned in a bowling game to a hockey rink? How quickly can you apply hockey philosophy to golf? Like there are parallels to be drawn, and I think that when you get into like hyper intelligent people, when I listen to Scottie Barnes, I don't hear an intellectual either. I don't hear someone who's going to be quoting Nietzsche, and I'm not hearing someone who's read all the same books that I've read. I obviously attended U of T,
and you would put him to sleep. Like, honest to God, it would mean nothing to him. You would talk to him,
but I don't think that that's true, because and the reason that I say that and the reason that I say that is because when you look at the people around him, like if you look at his video producer, you look at his trainer, if you listen to them speak, you'll understand very quickly that this is someone who intuitively.
Have you actually listened to the trainer talk to him while they're doing the stuff?
Yes.
I've
listened. I've watched videos of them working together. I have seen videos they produced together.
What's the back and forth? What's the dialogue?
I would say one of the things that I've noticed with Scottie is you don't have to tell him things twice. That is usually a very, very good thing. And as someone who's trained Olympic athletes, you could probably agree to that. That if you show a guy a combination or a particular thing once, and then they don't get it. Like, number one, it's in the eyes, right? To me, it's always in the eyes. Intelligence comes.
Have you coached? Have you coached?
No.
Okay.
Why?
So let me get back to that. Sure. That's not I'm not suggesting that you're an idiot because you haven't.
Sure.
What happens when you get an individual, and I've had plenty of them, aside from the number of Olympians, because that means garbage. Okay. I've had plenty of individuals that have not been able to respond quickly. I remember driving to every Sunday morning, driving to road races with Clive, and I'd be yelling at him. I'd say, "Why did you do that again? Why did you do that again?" After about the third or fourth time, I realized that, Jesus, he's not hearing this stuff. So I found 7, 8, 9, 10 different ways of phrasing what I wanted to say, but calmly and straightforward and gently. And you know what happened? All of a sudden, things started occurring. I have had so many individuals like that, and not only non-intelligent. Like, what happens now when you get a really intelligent individual? My memory, I suspect that, let's say, someone like the Raptors, I think that probably 90% of them have ADHD or ADD. And now that doesn't make them stupid, but what it does make them do is they can hear 5 or 6 different emotional inputs, verbal inputs, and be able to deal with them directly and quickly. That's the beauty about Scottie. The guy, you give him the ball on the outside. Now, forgive my bad. I've watched the Raptors since the beginning of time, and my mind doesn't work in a statistical fashion. You have a really big advantage when you do that, But what I fear is that you've kind of drifted to that side. To the point.
You're speaking to me specifically.
Well, recently, but
sure.
You're flexible. You know when it's going well, when it's not going well. You back off, you jump in. I love it, and that's what it should. And that's what a coach is. You know what I found the most effective thing is? It's when you're using the front door approach, and you walk in the front door and you say, "Okay, something stupid like lift your knees up." You know how long that works, Robert? That works for about
12 seconds.
Yeah, maybe. So let's talk side door approach. How do you do a side door approach? Well, when you gather all these athletes together and you're talking to them, explaining the workout, you're talking maybe to the new people coming in. Yeah. But at the same time, the words you're using are directly geared towards those people that are standing on the sidelines that you've been around, that have been around for 15 years. They hear you. Now, that's much more effective. The backdoor approach, which kills them all, is when you lay something out to them and they start to understand and they believe that they have discovered to themselves. That's the key. So what do you do with Scottie? You know,
Right.
And that's my point. You know, I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
I don't care whether I disagree with you or not, or whether how
Me
much.
neither. It's a great place to disagree, and to be honest, I often find myself enjoying conversations where I disagree with people, contrary to what people think, you know, that I hate disagreements. I don't hate disagreements. I just hate noise. I hate people who talk out of their ass. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I like learning from people, and, you know, who better to learn from than someone that I disagree with. So thanks a lot, Peter. I really appreciate it. I don't think we disagree that much. I think there's a few specific things and stuff, but
yeah.
I respect, you know, your pedigree and your background, and I feel like I learned a lot from our conversation today.
Yeah, well, listen, enjoy, keep doing what you're doing, because it is really important stuff. And we need multiple roads before we get successful. And, you know, I think that's what Nurse does really well.
I agree. Thank you so much, Peter. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for digging in and letting me spew a little bit.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Cheers, man. Final one there. Sorry, I said that was going to be the final, but then I saw Samuel waiting for 20 minutes, and I can't leave you hanging. Samuel, how are you?
It was good. Hey, how are you? No, it's good conversation, Coach Peter. There with you. I think you guys pretty much saying the same thing, but your intro kind of gets me going, and it's not you, and it's the Toronto media. I agree with you. I think I don't know what's wrong with some of these guys here. They don't have kind of like that big thinking, or whatever that term is, that long range.
When you said big, I thought you were going somewhere else.
No. It's like that long-term building for a championship, or what Masai talks about, whether he means it or not. I think he means it. I also, I'm sorry to say, some of our fan base, like they get up for a game and they're really happy, and then one other game and they're going to blame everybody. I see that even in the media. But here's what I've been annoyed for a lot, and I really don't want to call in there because you guys have a great show. But what annoys me is right now is our top guys like Masai, Bobby, and Nurse. If you have this thing going on, that means you're allowing it to go on. This is going on either by design, or you're allowing it to go on.
You're talking about the leaks.
The leaks. If Scottie you're not happy with him, maybe they pulled him to the side. If that's the real case, then don't do it through the media. This is not them. So either it's going through the
here's the thing. I mean, like, look, I've talked to a lot of people who've been in NBA locker rooms and stuff, and then the truth is, you know, like, you develop certain certain relationships. I have a relationship with somebody who plays for one team, and let's be honest, if that team goes dysfunctional and I become an NBA reporter again, then that guy's going to be like, hey, by the way, you know, De'Aaron Fox is a piece of crap in practice, or, you know, Karis LeVert is a real asshole, you know, off the court, or this guy's sleeping with his mistress. I mean, like, no holds barred when things go off the rails for guys in practice. Because, I mean, really, like, you know, people made a really big deal out of Draymond punching Jordan Poole, but I hate to say it, that has happened more than at least once last year, and it never got out anywhere, right? You gotta be realizing that these are some of the highest testosterone athletes in the world. These are some of the best guys in the world. They're super tough. They're all competitive, hyper competitive individuals. And once in a while, temper's gonna flare. I mean, like, I have actually been in a practice where, you know, there's a lot of shouting that's happened, a lot of derogatory shit that's been said, and you're like, oh my God, I'm glad that's not happening to me, you know, but it never got out. You know, it never got out in 2005, 2006. It didn't get out, you know, but suddenly it's getting out. Everything's getting out. And it seems to be very one-sided. I'm not hearing about, you know, Fred's, you know, side piece. I'm not hearing about, you know, Fred VanVleet, you know, yelling at people. I'm not hearing anything. Like, everything that leaks seems to be like, Scottie's a problem. Scottie's a problem. Scottie's a problem. It's like conditioning me to distrust my favorite player. And in a lot of ways, I always try to frame it from the perspective of, what if I didn't know what I know? What if I didn't follow what I follow? What if I didn't you know, and then I'll be like, wow, this is how I would be assuming Scottie Barnes. And then obviously I go onto Twitter and I see the Facebook comments and the Instagram comments and stuff. And I'm like, my God, people are actually buying this. People are actually buying this. And I launched Pensar Basketball to be a counter narrative. And trust me, you know, if Pensar Basketball existed, when people were saying that racist stuff about Pascal Siakam in the bubble, I would issue 1,000%. I don't give a shit what you guys think I would or would not do. I 100% would make a video and say, stop this, because that is unfair. You know, his race, ethnicity, shit does not have anything to do with him playing basketball.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, when you question a guy's impact on the court, fair game. When you start questioning his work ethic, I feel like that tag stays with you for a long time. That's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about whether or not they're going to think he mailed it in this offseason, which objectively it's a lie. What I'm worried about is every single time he's going to struggle for the rest of his career, there's going to be this little seed that you have planted in a lot of people's minds that this guy doesn't work very hard. Which, by the way, if you have, you know, any critical thinking, it's just impossible to go from where he was in Florida State to where he is today if you don't work really hard. It's just impossible. You know, he was supposed to be one of the most longest term prospects picked in the draft. A lot of people, Sam Vecini had him 6th. A lot of people had him 7th. Everyone who said, you know, we should pick him 7th, it was always about upside. It was always about, oh, by year 4, by year 5. Well, we're talking a third of the way through year 2, right? And he's averaging 14 points per game. And if I had asked Doug Smith or Michael Grange or anyone who's been really critical of him to jot down their expectations, he has by far passed their expectations, not only for first year, but for second year. But now they moved the goalpost, and now he has to work much harder if he wants to be a superstar. And then, you know, it's like, I think that the headline alone probably wouldn't have bothered me, because I agree with that. I do believe that in order for a player who's not a superstar to become a superstar, you have to work incredibly hard. It's all the other stuff in the article that really pissed me off.
Yeah. So again, glad I know for your intro, I guess I didn't know you were in writing. I think you'd kind of mention it, but wouldn't you think, since you are in that industry, somebody like Masai or Bobby or Nurse, if you're a Doug and you see a piece, kind of like a semi-hit piece, if you would, they would check you in some like, hey Rob, hey, don't do my guy dirty like this, right? Like, you can't. That's an unfair on the side. Wouldn't you think? I mean, if they're not, then they're not supporting their guy, right?
I think that's probably how things would work in, you know, a dictatorship, or like, you know, in a country that didn't have freedom of press. But here you are actually running with a story that is verified from a quote unquote Raptors insider, right? It's not fabrication, it's not a lie, it's not libel. There is somebody out there who has spoken to Doug Smith, and this is what they've said. They have said that.
Wouldn't it's like, for example, for role play, like if I'm like, I'm not saying, hey, Doug or Rob, don't write this piece. I thought what you wrote was unfair. I would even make, hey, we saw some of the articles. I think they're a bit unfair. That would actually show your guy that you're supporting them. I'm not saying like a dictatorship, don't write this piece or I'll put a bullet in your head. But I'm just saying, hey, go out and support your guy.
Like, there have been plenty of guys.
Your player. Right? You would do that for Fred VanVleet, but you wouldn't. Yeah, you know what I mean.
I don't.
Sorry,
I honestly don't think that's the way it works. I don't. Like, I mean, I understand that people have created.
I'm not in that world. That's why I'm asking. Sorry.
Yeah. Right. I don't think that's how it works. I know people have often, you know, put up this narrative that Michael Grange is a mouthpiece for the Raptors. They say that because obviously Sportsnet is owned by whom? Rogers. Right.
That's
and the Raptors are owned by Rogers. And so there is this, they're all in bed together. So everything I'm hearing from Michael Grange must be coming directly from Masai. But I mean, that's just not true. Right. Masai is not Michael Grange's boss.
But you wouldn't have somebody like a Skip Bayless who goes after LeBron, like the way he rides the guy, or go after, like, somebody would say.
But hold on. Do you think ESPN hates LeBron James? Do you think ESPN wants to sever ties with LeBron James? That ESPN doesn't have other hosts that have really great relationships? It just so happens that Skip Bayless has a great deal of autonomy in what he says on his show. That's kind of written into his contract. Stephen A. Smith is another example of a guy who's just bigger than basketball in a lot of ways. I mean, he has some creative direction on what way he wants to take a show. And that's part of his shtick and his appeal. And I think Rachel Nichols, before she got canned, had similar, sort of things. So these guys they have some liberty with where they're willing to take it. And I know that people often operate under this, I think, false premise that everything that comes out of the Toronto media is directly, a mouthpiece. But you have seen often, scathing articles about
no.
Kyle Lowry.
I think you misunderstood. I was saying.
Do you think there would be consequences?
What I was trying to say is, yeah, no, it's not consequences. I would have at least said, if I was Messiah or like any at the presser, like I wouldn't say there was a narco. They would kind of passively address it, and if they haven't addressed it, then and then these leaks are coming out. Either they're agreeing with it or they're using, like, there's some politics going on that we don't know, right? That's maybe the case. Or say like, hey, hey Doug, I think on the side there, I think you're being a little unfair. I know I can't tell you what to write, but I think you're being unfair to our guy. You know what? Like, what are you guys trying to do here? Like, but I'm not gonna, hey, you can't do your job or put a gun to your head kind of thing, right? But hey, I don't think you're fair, because they have that kind of relationship, right, with the media here.
I always treat this as seed planting, right? Like, there's a lot of ways to subconsciously influence someone's mind. I don't mean to get into a deep dive into neuroscience and psychology, but the truth is that there are a lot of ways to invite doubt in someone. Like, for instance, like if let's say you and I go to a dinner, right, where we're both trying to make an impression on our boss, right?
Correct.
And so I may, just jokingly call you out for something that you lied about, right? I might be like, okay, don't lie to me again like that time when we were at the sports game, right? Well, that just seems like an inside joke to you, and maybe to 30 people at the table, that's just an inside joke. But to somebody out there, I have just completely poked a hole in your credibility. And it's very subconscious. And they may not even realize that the next time you say something, there is 1% of them that, without even realizing, sort of doubts what you're saying because you lied to me about the sports thing. That was just an off-the-cuff statement. I think that journalists know this very well. I certainly knew this very well when I was 21 years old, so I would very much doubt that Doug Smith does not know this and Michael Grange does not know this. And if they don't know this, they should learn. They should pick up a psychology textbook and understand how, the subconscious mind, picks up on certain subtle cues. And I think that the picture that they have in tandem, by the way, painted of Scottie Barnes over the last 3 weeks is of a guy who's a little bit spoiled, who doesn't, and look, I pick up on a lot of stuff that maybe a lot of people don't. I often will slow something down for my girlfriend and be like, did you catch that? And she'll be like, what are you talking about? And then I'll slow it down for her and be like, watch where he says that word, and then he follows it with that word. It's very subconscious, and I'm very maybe I'm too aware of it. Like, I'm hyper aware of it. Like, I cue in on it like a little too much, and I'm glad that I do, because it is very effective. It is highly effective. Like, how they're able to do that, right? Like, for instance, like the SBF scandal, right? Like everything that happened with FTT tokens and all that stuff, right? What he's going through. How much putting Kevin O'Leary, right, Mr. Wonderful, on TV every single day, how much is that diverting from the attention that you have on the actual player in this game? Now, he's the crook. He's the bad guy. He's just a front man. He's just like it's false consciousness. So when I see a disastrous season pending for a team that is, quite frankly, underperforming, right, I see money on the line for whoever gets blamed for this, okay? Whoever is the author of this. If it's Nick Nurse, well, that's money on the line for him on his next contract and his perceived value around the league. If it leaks, if it starts to leak that the team is tuning Nick Nurse out, let's say tomorrow I pick up the Toronto Star and it says, the team is questioning Nick Nurse's philosophy. What if tomorrow's Toronto Star headline reads, Masai Ujiri internally wondering if Nick Nurse is the right coach for this team?
Exactly.
Wow. Well, that just shaved $3 million off his next contract, right? Because now he's lost confidence from one of the most astute talent evaluators in the NBA. How does that play out? Well, suddenly we're not talking about Scottie anymore. We're talking about Nick Nurse. What if, for instance, they say, OG has been a really cancerous presence. Look, Scottie Barnes was averaging 20 points per game without him, but, he's averaging 3 points a game since he returned, 4 points per game since he returned to the lineup. seems like Scottie and OG really don't get along. Well, now we're looking at OG. You know what I mean? So it doesn't really matter who you use as a scapegoat. I'm just very curious why Scottie Barnes at age 21 is being used as everyone's scapegoat for this season, because it's certainly not his fault.
Which
right?
is
He's part of it.
Which is funny because, you know, again, I don't know if this is the Raptor machine, media machine that, you know, that you've been filming all the Rico Hines. Obviously, his promotional material as well, right? And I see him there all the time. Well, no one speaks on OG wasn't there for every run. Well, OG's got his reasons. So to say that he's lazy, well, hold on, maybe did you put him
OG
through the
showed up
correct
OG showed up later than everybody.
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
nobody talks about it, right?
Chem, OG, and Otto showed up really late. I mean, they played a little bit. They joined the team and stuff. I think they practiced together. But there was sort of a community thing that Pascal, I think, initiated with Rico Hines and got everyone together. And, you know, if Scottie Barnes wants to go and do one day with Jalen Green, well, that's his fucking prerogative. It's the off season.
It's the off
season. He didn't go and gamble. He played basketball and he did it for charity. That's awesome. You know, if you have an issue with that, go fuck yourself. Like, I really don't appreciate that. And you're right. Like, a lot of stuff that you're saying about Scottie Barnes, you could be saying about a lot of players on this team. There are a lot of players who are struggling. But when you shift fan focus to one guy, because that's really what's happening, right? We're just picking which guy. And I'm saying why. Why are we picking which guy? Do we have to go all Fred? Is it not possible that it's a little bit all around? Yeah, I do believe, however, that when it comes to team sports, guys who have higher ranking positions, certainly we can agree that if the Lakers offense sucks, it's more on Kobe than on Smush Parker, right?
Correct.
Like if the Lakers defense is if the Chicago Bulls defense is tanking, maybe it's a little bit more on Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman than it is on Steve Kerr. So I think that the people who are, you know, being praised as the leaders get to hold the glory as the leaders, get paid as leaders, need to own up as leaders and shield their youngest teammate. I tell you right now, if I was in the NBA, if I had ever had that level of talent and I was 35 years old, like Thaddeus Young, you know, we are the same age, I would certainly do everything in my power to make sure that Christian Coloco and Scottie Barnes do not become the whipping boys for this season. Because those are the guys who don't have a contract on the line. That's the thing people are not noticing.
That's what I meant. Like, I think that's what I'm trying to get to is that takes somebody like Bobby or Masai or Nurse to say, look, guys, this is not fair, right? The guy works hard. He's struggling.
Yeah.
Let it go. Our team's struggling. We got a lot of injuries. This is what we're going through.
Yeah.
Guys, like either they privately they had an argument or not. That's what a leader should be doing. But I'm seeing the absence of this leadership saying that either they agree with it, there's something going on. And if they agree with it, why would you, even if they don't like Scottie, okay, then you're going in a different direction. Why would you have these kind of attack that's going to decrease his value, that if you don't like him, you trade him and eventually, then what are you doing here? This is where I'm kind of confused about our this organization. You're trying to hedge your bet, but by trying hedging multiple ways, you're actually destroying within at the current moment. That's where I'm kind of confused where we're going here.
Yeah. Well, I hear you, Samuel, and I really appreciate you calling in. I think that's probably a conversation for another night. We are definitely hitting into hour 2 of this.
Great show, by the way.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, man. Have a good night, man.
You too. Bye-bye.
I'm gonna think about what you said there. I'm gonna think about it, and hopefully I'll address it in the next show. Thanks, man. All right, so that's it for callers. Thank you so much. I see some people are tuning out, and of course it's close to midnight, so I definitely do not blame you. I think this was a good opportunity to just talk about some stuff. To this specific thing, is anyone blaming Coloco? I doubt that. You really do need to listen to a little bit more Raptor radio and podcast stuff. Trust me, there are a lot of people who have pointed the finger at him being the worst starting center in the NBA, how he shouldn't be starting, how he should be in the G League. Why are they playing him? And by the way, most of that is fair, you know, and then that's why I haven't responded to it. But they are shifting the onus on this guy. But I'll tell you, there's a team out there on which he would probably be a lot more effective. And we're not going to talk about that because we're not talking about the authors of this offense. We're not talking about Nick Nurse. I don't think anyone really in the media has really questioned Nick Nurse's philosophy. It's just been fans. It's been fans on the fringes saying, is this tenable? Is this work? I don't think a lot. I don't I don't recall. Like, I mean, the media has been sort of forced because I think that a lot of us, put together are putting their foot to the fire and are forcing them to be honest to address Fred VanVleet as well. But I think that when a guy goes 1 for 10 on Scotty's night, and as FA brought up, and thank you to him, that a lot of those were just tip-ins and stuff, and that 1 for 10 is probably a little bit of a disingenuous way to address that night that he had. The story that you write about that is really up to your own narrative. Like, what are you trying to advance? And I think that it's just been too often this year that the youngest players have been held as scapegoats. Last year it was, oh, the Raptors don't have a backup point guard, and I don't need to rehash this. It seems to be over and over again that when things are going wrong, it's certain guys getting thrown under the bus. And when things are going right, it's obviously, it's Pascal, it's Fred, it's OG. And, this is not shade to those guys at all. I mean, they're great players and they have done a tremendous amount of work. It just seems that you can't. I think that the onus needs to always be on your top guys. I think that's just how organizations should work. I should not go to Walmart and complain about the prices to the cashier, because if I do that, then I'm showing that I have a lot of growing up to do, in my opinion. So to the reporters out there who want to keep, writing these unfair things, and believe me, it is my opinion that is unfair. And if you keep doing it, I'm going to keep doing this. And I'm going to keep trying to tell people that you're wrong and that you're slanted and that you're biased and you're crooked. And that's just, those might be some pretty hefty allegations. And maybe I'll have to, answer to those someday. But I don't think anyone could read your piece with a critical eye and come away with any other logical explanation. Anyways, peace, guys. Have a great one and enjoy your night. And make sure to hit subscribe, like, all that stuff. Thank you all. Have a good night.